This is Bill Soloway from Trio, Philadelphia.
My name is Bill Soloway, and I'm a heart transplant recipient. I'm also a board member for the Philadelphia chapter of Transplant Recipients International here in Philadelphia. And I'm going to talk tonight on Trio, Living the Mission, and also talking about my experience of being a peer mentor, giving back and paying it forward. So what exactly is the mission of Trio? Trio is a nonprofit international organization committed to improving the quality of lives touched by the miracle of transplantation through support, advocacy, education, and awareness. So here are the four legs of Trio's mission. And for me, my experience started when I was 31 years old in 1996, and I had an episode in an airport down in Florida that I ended up back in Philadelphia at Temple University Hospital, which at the time was the #1 heart hospital in the city. And I end up on the floor with other heart transplant people that have been listed for transplant. And the irony of that, seeing a little peek in the box of what my future was going to hold. But at the time, I was diagnosed at Temple with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is what my brother died of, Jack, at the age of 27. So the first treatment that I ever received for this condition was to have an ICD implant, an implantable cardioverter defibrillator pacemaker. And at age 31, it kind of freaked me out. And I was, of course, asking the doctors at that point, hey, is there anybody else who's had this? I've never heard of a defibrillator. Certainly I've heard of pacemakers. And I said, I really would like to speak with somebody about this that's my age, what to expect, what their experience was. And they kind of looked at me and said, well, okay. And they were looking through their patient list to find somebody that I could talk to, but there was nobody that was my age. The best that they could do is there was a gentleman on the same floor as I waiting for a heart transplant, and he had a defibrillator implanted. So I got to spend a couple minutes with him discussing our conditions because he had a similar condition to me. He also lost a brother from the same condition, and then I wasn't so fearful of this anymore because I got to hear a different perspective of somebody that went through what I was going through and also who had a defibrillator implant. So all of a sudden my view of this changed because I had another opinion and was able to talk to somebody who lived through it. So for me it was just like, okay, if that guy did this, and he gave me his reasons, I said, that makes perfectly good sense to me. And it was at that point where I realized that having a peer mentor, somebody that you can turn to discuss your condition and treatment ahead of time was very important and very valid. So a couple things I want to talk to you about is a little bit about my background. I grew up with great morals and values because I was a Boy Scout and then became an Eagle Scout. And certainly one of the things, as you can see in the Scout Oath and the Scout Law, is to help other people at all times. And that was something that was instilled in me at an early age and still lives with me today, as well as in the Scout Law to be friendly, courteous, kind, as well as others. So these were things that were instilled in me at a young age that I certainly live by to today. A fun fact my heart surgeon, also an Eagle Scout. So what exactly is peer mentoring? Well, peer mentoring is a form of mentorship that usually takes place between a person who has lived through a specific experience, the peer mentor, and a person who is new to that experience, or a peer mentee. And an example would be an experienced student being a peer mentor to a new student, the peer mentee in a particular subject or in a new school. So I certainly then saw this, and I became the go-to person now within the hospitals of having a defibrillator implant, and when anybody else would ask to speak with someone, I was the first person that they called on. So I was just like, ooh, wow, I have this experience now, I can share with people, and I found great reward in that because I was able to give back and pay it forward, if you will, because someone had done that for me. And then as I got involved in it, it was just something that I found great joy and was very proud of to be able to do. So after my transplant, I realized that I'm not just living my life anymore, I'm really living for my donor as well. And I always have these two questions in mind whenever I'm doing anything that would be out in the public and get recognition. Whether I'm doing a Facebook post or what have you, I always ask myself, will it honor my donor in some way? And then the other question is, how will it have a positive impact on organ donation? So with that, after my transplant, which was at the Hospital of University of Pennsylvania in June of 2015, I had a biopsy, and the Gift of Life, OPO, is not far from there. They were having a volunteer training seminar, and I had learned about Gift of Life, our OPO, or Organ Procurement Organization, through the social workers at HUP. And I said, you know, I want to get involved in this organization. I want to be able to start giving back. So I came to a volunteer training just months after transplant, right after getting a biopsy, sitting with a group of people with a bandage on my neck, wanting to know how I could help out. And of course I went through the volunteer training and also the speaker training, and realized that I have an opportunity to go out and speak with organizations, one of which was the Pennsylvania Free and Accepted Masons, which I am one of. So when the requests were coming in from organizations that I was familiar with, I was the first one to raise my hand and say, I'd love to go out there and talk to these people because I know them and they can connect with me and it would resonate. So it wasn't just with that one organization that I got involved in, but then Gift of Life turned into me getting involved with Help Hope Live, because I was told through social work that there were going to be medical expenses that weren't going to be covered by insurance, and I really needed to have a game plan in place to address those financial needs. And they turned me on to Help Hope Live, which is based in the Radnor area, local to Philadelphia. And I did my due diligence and homework between going to an organization like Help Hope Live or doing something online to raise money, like these GoFundMe pages. And after I did my due diligence, I realized that Help Hope Live is really the best vehicle for me to do my fundraising, because they were a 501c3, so there were tax implications. They follow a lot of rules. And then all of a sudden in the news, I started hearing bad things about organizations like GoFundMe, where people were setting up accounts for people for good reason, but then they were taking the money and going on extravagant vacations or buying things. And you see these stories in the news all the time. And there was one just recently locally, a homeless man in New Jersey. But came on board with Help Hope Live. They helped me do fundraising. I believed in this, and I'm like going, this is something that I got to get the word out and let people know that we're in my position. So I got more involved with them as an ambassador. And then certainly that led me on to meeting Jim Gleason and getting involved in TRIO. And then I get involved with, what's the next thing? Team Philadelphia, which is a group of transplant recipients and living donors in the Philadelphia and New Jersey and Delaware region of Gift of Life. And we compete every 2 years in sports, and I was really excited about that. And then I learned more about the organization, and then I got involved with the Gift of Life Family House, which is a part of Gift of Life donor program, but a place where transplant patients and their families can come and stay, especially if they're new to the Philadelphia area. And I'm like going, wow, here are all these resources that I knew nothing about prior to transplant. So I just felt the overwhelming need to get involved in these. And of course, then being a Pennsylvania Mason, I got involved in the blood and organ donor program. And then that spins out to the UNOS ambassadors. So these are just some of the many different things that I got involved in just as a way to go out and talk to people. And primarily what I do is whenever I'm down at the hospital where I was transplanted at HUP, I do my business, and then I make it a point to go up to the floors that I was a patient on. And I get to talk with people that are recent heart transplant recipients, as well as people that are just listed. And these people are always glad to see somebody who's been through it, because they're more comfortable asking questions, because the doctors don't know, they didn't go through it, the nurses don't know, they didn't go through it. And even a lot of times, I'll get calls from social workers from the hospital saying, hey Bill, would you come in and talk to this person? They're just recently listed and they really want to see somebody that's been through the process and talk to them. So, you know, I'm able to do that. And of course the nurses know me because I was a patient there. And I have an opportunity to talk to newly listed people, and I go, where do you live? And they go, well, I'm out of the area and my family's trying to figure things out. I said, we have the Gift of Life Family House for you. And then they'll go, well, I'm really trying to figure out fundraising and such. And I go, here's Help Hope Live, take a look at this. So I have all of these tools in my toolbox, or arrows in my quiver, that I'm able to give out to people and say, hey, look at this, and how about this? And these are all valuable tools and resources that, as I mentioned, weren't really available to me that I knew of, and I had to really search through to find my way and navigate. So, you know, I make it a point that since I've gone through this journey, I want to make it easier for other people that have come through this journey as well. So here's a picture of just some of the many different things that I do. Tabling events with Gift of Life. This was a golf outing fundraiser for the Family House. Being a Mason, going around to different lodges through the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and talking about organ donation, and how important it is to be an organ donor and to register people. It's amazing all the myths that are out there, especially for the older generation. And then after they hear my story, I'm signing up people right there on the spot. Also get involved in the Heart Walk here in Philadelphia. Down in the bottom right-hand or left-hand corner there is me with my surgeon. If you notice, we're shaking with the left hand because that's the way Scouts shake hands. So that's Dr. Pavan Otluri, and we're both giving each other the Scout handshake. And then down here in the right corner is me with Help Hope Live, and this is right after the Philadelphia Eagles got their Super Bowl rings. This is one of the linemen Stefan, who is sporting his ring, and of course we're doing the fist bump. And then I have opportunities where one of my passions is bicycle riding, specifically riding a ordinary bike or high wheel or penny farthing. And I was just down in Frederick, Virginia this summer, and I put together this kit for Donate Life that's all the red and green colored, or excuse me, blue and green colors for Donate Life, and had my bike custom painted, and was able to not only race in that race, but also share my story with all of the members that were viewing, or the spectators that were viewing this event, to the point where I had people actually raising money during the race to give to me afterwards, to give to Donate Life. So that's the kind of impact. And I look at these things as getting involved in events that, again, promote organ donation or organ donation awareness, and that certainly honor my donor, because that's very important to me. Is everything that I do is because of my donor, and I want people to know how important that is and how important it is for them to be organ donors. So then what I did was this year with the Masons, I had a fellow brother reach out to me who needed a liver transplant. He's in the Hershey area, and they weren't really getting anywhere. He was listed. He had a lot of questions. He heard about the Masonic Blood and Organ Donor Program. He reached out, and I was able to talk to him and his wife and share my experience of what I went through. After some conversation, I made some suggestions. I never tell people what to do, but I like to give them options. And I said, why don't you come down to Philadelphia instead of in the suburb hospitals and get a second opinion. And I actually came in, since they were an older couple, not familiar with the city. I had them stay at the family house, and they were shuttled over so they didn't have to worry about any of the transportation. And I met them in the morning, and I spent the day with them going through a liver transplant, workup and evaluation, and question and answer session. And I became his advocate for the day. And it was something where they really appreciated having another set of ears to listen to what was going on to help them make decisions. And again, you know, my role is not to make decisions for them, but to point out certain things, give them options, help them, guide them in certain things. The long and short of it was he was waiting 260 days on the list that he was at in the Harrisburg area, no movement. They transferred their care down to the city here. Within 2 weeks after being listed, he ends up getting a liver transplant. So I actually held their hand through all of the steps, helping them with all the different facets of, you know, what was needed for that. And they were very thankful for that, because their kids weren't local, or they had nobody else to really help them through that. So, you know, then I realized through that experience just how important being an advocate is, you know, being a peer mentor. And, you know, just going back, I guess, to those slides to talk a little bit more about the mission here. You know, support, you know, to provide support to transplant candidates, recipients, donors, and their families to help alleviate the stresses and problems associated with the process. I mean, it can be very overwhelming. To have somebody in that support role is very key. You know, to have an advocate, advocacy, making the concerns and needs that affect the welfare of transplant candidates, recipients, their families, and donor families know to federal, state, and local government bodies, effectively communicating the views of transplant candidates, recipients, their families, and donor families on issues in the field of transportation and organ and tissue donation to the general public. Education, providing transplant candidates, recipients, donors, and their families with current information on developments in organ and tissue donation, transplantation, medications, social issues, and finances, informing transplant candidates, recipients and their families, and donor families on initiatives in the transplantation field by federal, state, and local government bodies. And of course, donor awareness, promoting organ and tissue donation as an important social responsibility, developing and supporting mechanisms to improve the availability of organs and tissues on an equitable basis to meet the needs of transplant candidates. So, as I'm talking through these, I'm hitting on all of the 4 key portions of what TRIO is all about. And I know there will be people that will be viewing my talk on YouTube, on the internet, since we post these videos. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is that after you receive a life-saving organ, a lot of us have the need to give back. And what's really important is to be grounded in an organization like TRIO. If you don't have one in your area, certainly go to our website and look up to see if there is a chapter in your area. And if there isn't, please reach out to us and we can help you get one started. But it's very important that you're grounded and anchored in a group like this, because not only are we support for one another, but we live to the mission of fulfilling these 4 obligations of what TRIO is all about. And this is me at the Transplant Games of America 2 years ago in Cleveland, Ohio. And it was at that point where I came up with this little saying that I have. It's the tagline for any emails that I send out, that you have 1 life to live and 8 lives to give. So a healthy organ donor can save up to 8 lives and certainly enhance the many more lives through tissue and bone and other body parts. And the last thing that I wanted to leave you with is something that a Scoutmaster had given to me through an Eagle Scout Court of Honor, which I think is very appropriate for how I live my life, how the TRIO mission affects other people, with this poem called The Bridge Builder. An old man going a long highway came in the evening cold and gray to a chasm vast and deep and wide. The old man crossed in the twilight dim. The sullen stream had no fears for him, but he stopped when safe on the other side and built a bridge to span the tide. Old man, said a fellow pilgrim near, you are wasting your strength with building here. Your journey will end with the ending day. You'll never again will pass this way. You've crossed the chasm deep and wide. Why build you this bridge at evening tide? The builder lifted his old gray head. Good friend, in the path I have come, he said, there followeth after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. This chasm which has been as naught to me, to that fair-haired youth might a pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I am building the bridge for him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice, Bill.
Excellent.
Bill is famous for his hand punch,
Fist bump.
fist bump. Steve, any questions for Bill? Or any comments?
I can't critique it because you're doing everything that one can possibly do, and if there is something I haven't thought of to ask you, you're probably cogitating in your own brain. What am I missing? What am I failing to do?
You're right.
Just kudos to you, and keep it up. Keep doing what you're doing.
And on the other side here, Bob and Sue have been long-term donor and kidney recipient. Why don't you add in your own thoughts or briefly your story, and we all come at this at different ages, and it's good to see the youth coming in, as Bill represents, with the energy that sometimes as we get a little bit older, that energy wanes. But I know the two of you have always been out there, especially at the Dash each year, promoting organ donation and TRIO. Any comments you'd like to add, or comments to Bill? Go ahead.
I think Bill did a wonderful job and a wonderful presentation. Being a living kidney donor, it was a little bit different for us than it is for a organ donor from a cadaver. So we have a little kind of a different experience. Bob's kidney for me lasted 16 years, and then the medication he was taking, it failed, so he had to have a second transplant, and our daughter gave him one of her kidneys. So her and I now share a very special bond because of that. And our two sons were also matches, and they were willing to donate if necessary too. So Bob has been going pretty good for 20-some years now, and hopefully he has many, many more years to go.
And I gotta say, Bob and Sue are out here for everything and anything we do, either through Gift of Life or with TRIO. And if we had many, many more people with that kind of dedication and they come out and support everything, wouldn't this be a great world? As Bill is setting his own pace and giving example to the world of how to celebrate this life extension gift that we get. And Steve's out there also. It's just an amazing thing to have these kind of people sharing their gifts in ways that help other people who are starting the journey or having some challenges along that journey. So, Bill, thank you very much, and I think you definitely are an inspiration to all of us. Keep up the good work. And you're how old now?
52.
52. Oh, he's in the second half of the century now.
I just wanted to say one other thing, Jim, about our experience. Jim mentioned that we travel quite often, which we do. We are very fond of
That's putting it mildly.
And you'd be surprised when you get on a cruise ship how the conversation comes around, and you meet so many people that have some things in common with you about organ donation, or they know somebody that has a transplant. We went to one cruise, we went to lunch one day. It was an open seating lunch in the dining room, and every single person at that table had some connection with organ donation or transplantation. Just all it did was to take one person to get started, and the whole conversation went around the table. And I mean, it amazed me that we were all put together, but somebody upstairs, I think, made that happen for us. So we like to share our experience and encourage people to get involved and be donors.
And as more and more people receive an organ transplant, then more and more families have a transplant experience within their family, and more people, like you said, in what seems to be a small world, are connected to either organ donation or transplantation. And that's what TRIO is all about, both supporting those patients and getting the word out that, one, transplantation works, and hey, what are you going to do with the organs when you no longer need them? Just bury them in the ground, as my donor said? Why not pass them on and save 8 or more lives like you just mentioned, Bill? So thank you very much again.